Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast. And today's guest is Anton Duplessis, who's the CEO of Zinnwald Lithium, who are focused on fast-tracking the late-stage integrated Zinnwald Lithium project in Germany to production and supply a suite of high-value battery-grade lithium products to Europe's rapidly growing EV and energy storage markets. Anton has an investment background and he's also obviously the helm of this company to take this project forward. So enough from me. Let's welcome Anton to the podcast. How you doing, Anton?
Hi, Rob. Great to be on.
Yeah, appreciate your time as well. So wondered if you can give us a little bit of a background about yourself. Obviously, I mentioned that you're in the have been in the investment banking world, and obviously you have been in the mining industry prior to this. So wondered if you can give our audience an overview of your career.
Sure. So, I mean, as you've said, I've got a primarily financial background, but I've been associated with the mining industry pretty much my whole working life. So I started off working for a big mining company, then moved into investment banking where I focused primarily on the mining space. And that was doing M&A financings, both equity and debt, and really, involved strategically in the mining space as well. So I did that for just over 20 years, and I became involved in Zinnwald and its precursor company, Aris Resources, about 2 years ago, and sort of worked on a few sort of strategic options for the company, and that culminated in us acquiring the Zinnwald Lithium project in October of last year, and we've recently then consolidated 100% of the ownership of that project.
Okay, I want to give the audience an overview of the company, obviously since you started.
Sure. So the primary asset is the Zinnwald Lithium project. We do own an old zinc lead project in Ireland, but that's not really the focus of business. The real focus is the lithium project in Germany. So what is that project? It's a sort of feasibility stage lithium project located on the German-Czech border, so about 35 kilometers from Dresden in the former East Germany. And the deposit, the Zinnwald deposit, sits right on the border and is actually part of the same ore body that the Zinnwald project that sits within EMH is. So it's one ore body, but we have the licenses on the German side. As I mentioned, it's a feasibility stage project, and the sort of focus of the project is to produce battery grade material. So we want to take production all the way through to battery grade materials, and those will be used to supply the European battery industry, which is going through a period of quite significant growth at the moment.
Yes, certainly. Obviously, mining and Germany don't necessarily go hand in hand. I just wanted to give us an overview of the mining industry in Germany. I haven't heard much about what happens in Germany in regards to mining. So just wondering if you just give us an overview of the mining industry. Sure.
So, I mean, I think people associate mining in Germany perhaps more with coal mining, because that formed certainly in the former Eastern Germany, that formed a big part of their energy mix. But that's been changing significantly, and we can talk about that, the implications of that in a little bit. But in terms of other mining, the region where our project is based actually is an historic mining area. It was historically mined for tin and tungsten, and our project is on the site of an historic mine that was mined for some 400 years. So, mining is not a new thing for this particular part of Germany, and in fact, there's a lot of support for it in the region. It's been an important employer in the past, and there's a hope that it will be an important employer in the future. So there is a history of mining. There's an understanding of mining. Freiburg, which is another large town in the area, has a university that has a mining department, produces a number of geologists and mining engineers every year. So yes, Germany is not an area that one typically associates with mining in the same way as perhaps Australia or Canada or South Africa, but it's not something completely new and unusual for the country.
And how's the government and local, I suppose, councils in the area, how they received the project, and I suppose also the local communities? Like you said, it is a mining, it has been a mining town in the past. What are their thoughts around your plans and what you're looking to do?
I think they're very excited about it. So, they're proud of their mining heritage. And when they look at the potential for sort of new industries, they're quite excited about being part of that. And I think, there's an element of the fact that it's lithium and the kind of importance of lithium to the way the government is thinking about green technologies and their commitments in terms of mitigating climate change, etc. Lithium is a key part of the enabling technologies for that, and so it is favorable. It's typically favorably received. So I think all of those aspects are in our favor. We have a team on the ground in Germany at the project, and the project leader of that team has been associated with the project since inception. So he's been involved with it for about 10 years. He has a very good relationship with the local authorities, and keeps them fully informed as to what we're doing. So we think they're excited, and we think they will be a positive influence on the project as we move forward with it.
Obviously, we know lithium demand is obviously forecast to grow. How rapidly do you see the lithium market? And I suppose if we're looking at Europe, how rapidly do you think it's going to grow? And obviously, you're going to be supplying to the I suppose local market and Europe.
Sure. So, I mean, if we think about lithium-ion batteries, they've been around for some time, but it's really only relatively recently that the technology has reached a level. So in terms of energy density, charging capacity, things like that have made it a workable product for certain new applications. And what I'm thinking about there primarily is electric vehicles, but there are other applications as well, like stationary storage, and so on. And the other thing that's changed is the cost of producing batteries has reduced significantly. And it's really only, as I say, in the last sort of 5 or 6 years that it's got into the zone where these can be viable technologies to use in vehicles. So to put it a little bit in perspective and kind of put some numbers around what the potential growth could be, electric vehicles in 2020 were probably only about 3% of global passenger car production. So about 3 million cars out of a total of 100 million. Now, you've seen many European countries making statements around they're going to ban the sales of new internal combustion cars by 2030, 2035, 2040, etc. There are a whole lot of dates put out there, but increasingly those dates are coming forward. So if you think about the global car industry, so if only 3 million cars now are electric, and we need to get to 100 million cars by some date, that is significant growth potential. To focus in a little bit on Europe specifically, there are a number of lithium-ion battery factories in Europe at the moment, and they produce on a combined basis about 30 gigawatt hours annual capacity of batteries. The projections that I've seen out there from various commentators on the sector is that battery factory capacity will grow to 700 gigawatts by the late 2020s. So, that's only sort of 7 to 9 years time. It's really not a long time. And at that level, so the global annual consumption of lithium for batteries is about 350,000 tons a year. So globally, it's a relatively, in terms of tonnage, a relatively small industry. But if Europe is producing 700 gigawatt hours batteries per year by the late 2020s. That's 350,000 tons of consumption in Europe alone, from very little at the moment. So we're talking about an order of magnitude growth in demand. How quickly it'll happen depends on how quickly these technologies take over. Typically, if you look at past disruptive technologies, they've tended to take over more quickly than people have perhaps thought. So I think that's telling for this industry. There are lots of different growth forecasts out there, but they typically come in annual growth of 18 to 20% per annum on a compound annual growth basis. So it's a rapidly growing sector.
Yeah, certainly. Why is localization of supply important, and what is being done to sort of encourage that? And obviously, we're looking at the European market.
Sure. So I think it's coming from two sides. So on the one side, you've got both sort of national governments and then the EU acting as a sort of a consortium as well. That is actively trying to encourage localization of supply. Now, the auto industry is very important for Europe. You've got some big auto manufacturers, a lot of them based in Germany, and currently lithium-ion batteries is predominantly an Asian business. And you've got these players who are looking at that and thinking, well, actually, if the one thing that the pandemic and the experience of the last 18 months has shown up is that there's a certain fragility to a global supply chain, and it is helpful to have a local supply chain. So from an automaker or from a user perspective, that's an important driving factor. And in fact, Reuters reported on a survey today that talked about how 80% of respondents amongst battery manufacturers in Europe wanted localization of supply. So there's definitely a pull factor there. I mean, if you're a German car manufacturer, or if you're any car manufacturer, and you're thinking seriously about EVs, you have to write an 8-year warranty on your car's batteries. And they're the biggest cost component of an electric vehicle. So you want certainty that you have security of supply, and you also want certainty that your suppliers are fully certified, comply with all the relevant environmental, social, etc. regulations. And that's much easier to be confident on when it's local supply. I mean, we saw some time ago talk around the cobalt space, where people were unsure about where the cobalt was coming from, whether it was being mined in a sustainable and suitable fashion, etc. That hasn't impacted the lithium space as much, but it's on the top of people's minds amongst customers. And then the EU and local governments are committed to greening the economy. And I think, as I mentioned before, this is a key part of an enabling technology for that. And so they want to encourage it locally. And the EU has put lithium on the list of critical materials that they want to see local production from. And they've supported, mainly where their focus has been up to now, has been on supporting the establishment of battery manufacturers. But they're now thinking a little bit more about the whole supply chain, and that includes the core components of the batteries, so the lithium and nickel and the other components that are needed.
Yeah. What are the challenges in creating a local supply in Europe, and how are you guys positioned compared to your peers?
Sure. So look, I mean, I think probably the main challenge with any mining in Europe is Europe is a densely populated region, and it's got typically has very strong devolved local authorities, and often local communities can have concerns around mining operations in their backyards, and so permitting and sort of social license to operate are some of the key constraints typically in Europe. Also, you mentioned before, you don't typically associate some of these countries with mining, and that flows through to sort of level of expertise available in some places, whether that be on the mining side or even on the chemical processing side. So, I mean, how do we fit with that? So as I mentioned, there is a history of mining in the region where our project is. The project itself is located on the site of what was a mine for over 400 years. So this is not a new thing for the region. We do have a team on the ground. And the other important thing, and this is specific to lithium, is in large part, if you're going downstream to battery grade product, that is a very chemical heavy process, and it's not an easy process to get right. So having the required expertise in that area is quite critical to the success of projects like this. And Germany, and that part of Germany is really kind of the heart of the German chemical industry. So you have a knowledge and understanding of industrial chemical businesses done at an industrial scale, and the relevant expertise is therefore, it's not new to that part of the world. And I think that's an important element of our project, is having that kind of depth of expertise available in the region.
Yeah. Obviously, as well as mining, you have downstream operations. What products are you looking to produce?
So, well, we will have, the plan is to have downstream operations all the way to battery grade products. So the feasibility study that was done for the project envisaged the potential for two products: lithium fluoride, which is used in battery electrolytes. So it's a battery product. The project is also capable of producing battery grade lithium carbonate. What we are doing at the moment is extensive test work on the ability to make a product called lithium hydroxide, which is, again, one of the core products for the battery sector. That process is ongoing. The initial results we've had have been very promising, but we have a little bit more work to do on that. But one of the things I think is an advantage of this project is it does have the potential to be quite a flexible producer of different products.
Okay. I know that you recently picked up an additional exploration license in the area. Just wondering if you can go into more detail around that.
Sure. So we picked up a license called the Zaddersdorf license. It was a license that had previously been drilled by another player, and so there actually is an historic JORC resource established on this license of about 25 million tons. So to put that in context, our core mining license, the Zinnwald license, is just over 40 million tons. So we've added effectively another 50% to our resource base by adding this other license. It's quite close to our core license, so it's less than 15 kilometers away. And in fact, it's not the only exploration license we own in the area. We own two others in the region, also within 15 kilometers. So I think it's early days with regard to these licenses. We need to do more work on them, but it's quite exciting for us in terms of what it might mean for our project, because they are, as I say, they're relatively close to our existing project. And one of the reasons we were granted this particular license is, we are the most logical holder of that license. And I think that, again, coming back to our relationship with the local authorities and the local community, that was one of the key, I think that's a key demonstrator of the relationship we have there. That, it was a competitive process to get that license, and it was granted to us. But it does have the potential to add to our project. Yeah.
Obviously, there's talk in the city that you're going to be the first European lithium project going into production. Do you agree with that? I suppose, what is the timescale for this to happen?
Well, look, it's always difficult to know exactly where one ranks relative to others, because obviously we don't have we only really have the public disclosures of other projects to go on. But I think we are one of the most advanced projects out there, if you think in terms of kind of where we are in terms of the feasibility process. There are a lot of projects in Europe that are still at sort of the pre-feas stage. We're a little advanced from that. And then in terms of mining license, we have a mining license issued already. We've completed, or we don't have any EIS obligations still outstanding, so we've got through that process. And then we are advancing on our permitting process. But in terms of exactly when, there's still facets of the project that we're working on. I mentioned the hydroxide test work. We have to complete that. We need to finalize decisions around where we place the chemical processing site. We also need to advance discussions on the financing side. We need to complete our permitting process, etc. So there are still a few processes and hurdles to get over. But I think we are one of the more advanced projects out there. So there's certainly a possibility for us to be the first out the gate in Europe.
Yeah. And as a conclusion, just wondered if you can sum up maybe the short and medium term outlook for the company and why people should pay close attention to your journey.
Well, look, I think we've worked quite quickly. So if you think back to, we acquired 50% of the project in October of last year, and then within sort of the next 6 months, we were able to acquire the other 50%. We're making exciting progress with the project, and now that we own 100%, that time frame is a little bit more in our control. So all of those things are interesting. I think the industry, I think the market is beginning to accept that this growth in demand is real. And it's imminent, and that there are limits to the expansions that are possible for the incumbent lithium producers around the world. Europe desperately wants to encourage production in Europe, and we're extremely well positioned to play into that. We're in Germany, which is the heart of the auto industry. It's the automakers that are driving this right now. You've got VW saying they want to produce over 1 million electric cars by 2023. That's only 2 years away. And current production in Europe of electric cars is probably less than 500,000 cars. So we're talking really significant growth, and that ultimately I think will reflect in the quality stories will start to get acceptance and get recognized, and I think that hopefully we will be part of that.
Yeah, there's one more question I've just thought of. With all the car manufacturers, and obviously there's quite a few in Germany, do they really understand sort of the lack of resources for manufacturing electric vehicles, not just obviously focusing on one particular resource, but a number of resources? Do they realize that mining really does have to sort of dig deep, and there is I suppose a undersupply of many of these resources across the world for the predictions that governments and even the car manufacturers are putting out there?
Look, I think it's increasingly some, and it differs by auto manufacturer. But so there's certainly some who get it more than others do. And if you look at the ones that are taking battery manufacture in-house, they are the ones that are grappling with the supply chains for those battery manufacturing operations. So not everyone, but increasingly the case that they're focused on it, which is I think a very helpful thing for the industry, because it will drive pressure on the various bodies that approve these things, and hopefully will translate into action being taken to actually advance supply.
Yeah, and so I really appreciate your time and give us an overview of the project that you have there in Germany. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, how can they go about doing that? Are you on any social media platforms as well?
Sure. I mean, we put our stuff on Twitter and LinkedIn, and obviously we, as and when we have important information to put out, we disclose that in short order. So, I think, keep watching our website. We put everything out on that. We also put out a constant Twitter stream. So follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc.
Yeah. Really appreciate your time again. And audience, those that are listening, if you've got any questions for Anton, then see the show notes and we have all the details there if you want to reach out to him if you have any questions around maybe around their project or around the automotive industry, and especially looking at Europe as well. So really appreciate your time. Thank you for listening. If you can share this episode amongst your friends, family, etc. Again, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, appreciate if you can share and like below, so this podcast or episode goes out to more and more people so they have access to this information. So thank you for listening again. Until next time, happy mining.